May 1945. The war was over, or so the world believed. But deep in a Bavarian forest, American soldiers stumbled upon something that should never have been found. A bunker still burning from the inside, symbols carved into stone that belonged to no known language. Deformed bones scattered through tunnels that stretched for miles, and sealed metal cylinders containing a black fluid that ignited on contact with air, killing 2 men instantly. The witnesses were silenced, the files erased, the coordinates removed from every map. For decades, it was just a rumor, until a retired scientist broke his silence, revealed a forbidden photograph, and was found dead 2 months later. What they uncovered beneath that forest could rewrite everything we know about the end of World War II. Because according to newly leaked documents, Project Morgenrot wasn't destroyed in 1945. It was transferred. And the ground where that bunker once burned is still guarded, still fenced, still forbidden. Stay until the end. Because what they discovered inside that chamber might still be alive. In the spring of 1945, as Allied forces advanced through southern Germany, the world believed the war was almost over. The Reich was collapsing. Cities lay in ruins. Hitler's generals were surrendering one after another. Berlin was burning. Nazi flags were falling from government buildings. German soldiers were abandoning their weapons on the roads. Europe was celebrating. Newspapers announced the final victory. But deep in the forests of Bavaria, something continued to burn. American reconnaissance pilots reported columns of smoke rising from an area marked only on old German maps, a restricted zone known locally as Der Schwarze Wald, the Black Forest. No villages, no roads, no civilians, only dense trees stretching for kilometers. And a single concrete structure half buried in the earth, invisible from any angle except from the air. Captured German military maps showed the zone as wasteland. Allied maps didn't even include it. It was as if that piece of land didn't exist for anyone. But the smoke kept rising day after day, week after week, and someone had to investigate. When the 12th Armored Division arrived on May 8, 1945, the very day Germany officially surrendered, they expected to find a fuel depot or an abandoned munitions warehouse, perhaps a command post destroyed by bombing. What they found was a base burned almost to its foundations, its main entrance sealed with rubble and ash. But there was something strange. The fire didn't appear to be the result of bombing. There were no craters, no signs of external explosions. The damage came from inside. The ground was still hot when they arrived. The air smelled of chemicals and something else, something metallic and sickly sweet that none of the soldiers could identify. Some men vomited as soon as they got out of their vehicles. Others refused to approach. The smell was so penetrating that it permeated clothing, hair, even seemed to seep into the skin. Sergeant William Kramer was among the first to enter. He was 28 years old, from Ohio, father of 2 children he had never seen, because they were born while he was in Europe. He had survived Normandy, the winter in the Ardennes, dozens of battles that had hardened him. But nothing prepared him for what he saw in that bunker. He would later describe what he found in a letter to his wife, a letter that the U.S. Army confiscated and never returned. His wife waited for that letter for months. It never arrived. "We thought it was a laboratory," Kramer wrote. There were metal tables, surgical instruments, broken glass tubes scattered across the floor, but nothing we could recognize as normal medical equipment. The walls had symbols carved into them, not German words, not numbers, not swastikas as we expected to see, but something older, more primitive. They looked like runes, but not like the ones the SS used. These were different, deeper, as if someone had carved them urgently with fear. Inside the tunnels, which extended much farther than appeared from the outside, they found rows of scorched equipment, overturned cabinets, melted typewriters with paper still jammed in the rollers, documents burned until illegible, and bones. Dozens of them scattered through the corridors, as if they had been thrown randomly. Some were clearly human, others smaller, deformed, with proportions that didn't correspond to any known mammal. Whatever had happened there, someone had tried to erase it, but they had done so hastily, desperately, as if time had run out. The official report submitted by the division commander, Colonel James Whitmore, described it as an enemy research facility destroyed during the retreat. Sterile language, bureaucratic, designed not to attract attention. But there were no records of such a facility in captured Nazi archives. No architectural plans, no personnel lists, no construction orders, no budgets, no communications, nothing. It was as if the place had never officially existed. And then everything related to the site disappeared from military records. The soldiers who entered were reassigned within days, dispersed to different units in different countries. Their personal diaries were confiscated under direct orders from higher command. The coordinates were deleted from Allied maps. Photographs that some soldiers had taken disappeared from their belongings. When they tried to talk about the place, they were ordered to be silent under threat of court-martial. For decades, the event was nothing more than a rumor told in veterans' halls, the burned bunker in the Bavarian forests. A story that young soldiers told to skeptical veterans. A military urban legend. Something that maybe happened, maybe didn't. With each passing year, the details became vaguer, the witnesses older, until almost no one remembered the truth. Until 1982. If you're listening to this, like it right now, because what comes next is going to change everything you thought you knew about the end of World War II and what they really found beneath that cursed forest. A retired American scientist named Dr. Harold Peterson contacted a journalist in Munich with a confession he had kept for 37 years. He said he had been there, not as a soldier on the day of discovery, but as part of a post-war scientific research team that arrived 2 weeks later. A team no one had ever mentioned. A team that officially never existed. And what he saw in those tunnels had tormented him every night for nearly 4 decades. Peterson was 63 years old when he spoke with the journalist. He lived alone in a small house in Maryland. He had been a university professor, chemical researcher, government consultant, a respected man in his field. But he had never mentioned his work in Germany, never put those years on his resume. When asked about his service in the war, he changed the subject, until he couldn't anymore. Peterson claimed the site wasn't just a laboratory. It was part of a network of underground facilities connected to a secret SS program known as Project Morgenrot, Project Dawn. A name that didn't appear in any captured documents, in any war criminal interrogations, in any Nuremberg trials. The project's objective, according to Peterson, was extreme human endurance and development of next-generation biological weaponry. But not conventional bacterial weapons. Something different. Something the Nazis believed would give them a definitive advantage, even when they were losing on all fronts. But there was something else. Something Peterson could barely articulate without his voice trembling. Among the charred ruins, His team found a reinforced steel vault, blackened by the exterior fire but intact, sealed with a locking mechanism that took them 2 days to open. Inside were metal cylinders the size of oxygen tanks, hermetically sealed, without rust, without apparent damage, each labeled only with a red seal that none of them recognized. It wasn't a swastika. It wasn't an imperial eagle. It was something older, a symbol that one of the German translators on the team identified as similar to markings used in medieval alchemical texts. Peterson said one cylinder was opened under direct orders from the commanding officer, a major whose name Peterson refused to reveal. Inside was a viscous, dark fluid, almost black, with a consistency between oil and coagulated blood. When exposed to air, it reacted violently. First it bubbled, then it expanded, and finally it ignited with a brilliant green flame that reached the tunnel ceiling. The temperature rose so quickly that nearby metal began to melt. The resulting explosion killed 2 men instantly and left 3 others with chemical burns that kept them hospitalized for months. It destroyed most of the physical evidence they had collected. The remaining containers, 8 in total, were sealed in lead boxes and immediately taken to an undisclosed U.S. facility. Peterson only knew they were transported in a special military convoy, escorted by intelligence agents. Their contents were never revealed. The scientific team was forbidden to ask questions. They were made to sign confidentiality agreements under penalty of imprisonment. When the journalist asked for proof of his claims, Peterson handed over a photograph he had managed to hide all those years. A photo he had hidden in the lining of his suitcase when he left Germany. It showed a scorched concrete corridor, a broken laboratory table with instruments still on top, and a burned mark on the back wall. A 6-pointed spiral, surrounded by letters or symbols that didn't belong to any known alphabet. Not Latin, not Greek, not Cyrillic, not Hebrew. The journalist made copies before returning the original. 2 months later, Dr. Harold Peterson was found dead in his home in Maryland. It was December 14th, 1982. The official cause was listed as cardiac arrest. He was 63 years old, had no history of heart problems, had passed a complete medical examination 3 months earlier. His family insisted on an autopsy. Authorities refused. The body was quickly cremated under orders no one could explain. The original photo he had shown the journalist disappeared from his house. The copies the journalist had made also disappeared from his office in a burglary where nothing else was taken. Share this video now if you believe the truth must come to light, because there are powerful forces that don't want you to know what really happened in that bunker and what happened to those containers that were never officially acknowledged. But fragments of Peterson's testimony resurfaced years later in declassified OSS files, the Office of Strategic Services, precursor to the CIA. In 1998, under pressure from historians and through Freedom of Information Act requests, certain documents related to operations in Germany were released. Most were so heavily redacted they were unreadable, entire pages with black blocks. But one memorandum dated May 23, 1946, almost a year after the initial discovery, read, Subject: German Underground Research Complex, Bavaria, Sector 7. Access restricted to cosmic-level personnel only. Total suppression of related information recommended. Possible links with Operation Paperclip assets. Material transferred to Dugway facility. Future mentions prohibited. That single line reignited the mystery and opened a Pandora's box of questions. Because if the Americans had recovered scientific material from the site, and if that material had links to Operation Paperclip, the secret program that brought Nazi scientists to the United States, then that material, that mysterious fluid, those experiments, could have been transferred directly to American research programs. The same programs that shaped early Cold War technology, chemical weapons, biological weapons, mind control experiments, Operation Artichoke, Project MK Ultra. All those dark lines of research we now know existed. The Dugway facility mentioned in the document is the Dugway Proving Ground in Utah, a military base where chemical and biological weapons testing was conducted for decades. It's one of the most secret and restricted places on American soil. What happened there with the material from Bavaria has never been confirmed. No official agency has ever confirmed the existence of Project Morgenrot. Not Germany, not the United States, not the United Kingdom, nor any of the Allied powers have acknowledged such a program. But documents released under the Freedom of Information Act in 2017 mention biological experiments of an unconventional nature conducted in southern Germany between 1944 and 1945. Experiments involving human subjects without consent. Experiments that went beyond even the documented horrors of concentration camps. To this day, no one knows exactly what those experiments were, or what they were trying to achieve. But the forest where the bunker once stood remains off limits to the public. It's fenced with industrial barbed wire, guarded by private security whose legal authority no one has been able to trace, marked with radiation warning signs despite Geiger counters detecting no abnormal levels. German authorities claim it's private property, but property records are confusing, contradictory. Shell companies leading to other shell companies. No one seems to really know who owns it. Local residents, the few who still live in nearby villages, call it der verfluchte Ort, the cursed place. They have stories passed down from generation to generation. Some say that at night you can still hear the hum of underground machinery, a low, constant sound like a giant generator that never shuts off. Others claim the trees grow faster there, thicker, taller, with roots that emerge from the ground, as if something is pushing them from below, feeding on something buried deep. Hunters avoid the area, animals too. There are no birds nesting there, no deer, not even insects at certain times of the year. It's as if natural life knows it should stay away. The exact coordinates of the site have never been publicly revealed, and every time independent researchers, curious journalists, or determined historians try to locate it using old maps and veterans' testimonies, something goes wrong. The ground collapses, compasses stop working properly. GPS equipment gives erroneous readings. It's as if the forest itself is swallowing the past, protecting whatever lies beneath. In 2003, a team of German documentarians attempted to film in the area. They obtained all necessary permits, or so they thought. They were stopped half a kilometer from the site by armed guards who wore no identification. Their cameras were confiscated, their files erased. When they tried to file an official complaint, they discovered the permits they had obtained had been retroactively revoked. For national security reasons, authorities said. In 2011, an amateur geologist using public satellite imagery identified what appeared to be thermal anomalies in the area, heat patterns that didn't correspond to natural geological activity. He posted his findings on an internet forum. 3 days later, his account was deleted. His files disappeared, and the satellite images of that region were updated, showing only normal forest, as if someone had digitally edited the evidence. Subscribe right now, because in upcoming videos, we're going to reveal more classified cases that have been hidden for decades. Secrets that will forever change your understanding of history and make you question everything you were taught about World War II. So, the question remains unanswered. Was it a biological weapons laboratory designed to create a plague that could change the course of the war in the Reich's desperate final days? Was it a hidden experiment related to Nazi obsessions with the supernatural, ancient artifacts, forces they believed they could control? Or was it a secret collaboration, something the Allies discovered and decided the world should never know, because it involved complicity that would destroy the official narrative of victory? The official answer is silence. A silence that has lasted 80 years. The files remain sealed under multiple levels of classification. The witnesses are dead or missing. The physical evidence was destroyed, hidden, or denied. Every door that opens leads to another door closed with more locks. Only the forest remembers. And perhaps what burns beneath it, in tunnels no one admits exist, still waits to be found. By someone brave enough, or foolish enough, to dig where all the governments of the world seem to have agreed no one should look. Because if 80 years of secrecy have taught us anything, it's that when silence is so absolute, when the cover-up is so complete, there's usually a reason, and that reason is rarely to protect us. It's to protect those who made decisions that cannot be revealed. Decisions that would change how we see the past and the present.